right, so we'll go ahead and get started for you today. So hello, my name is Nadalyn Reyes,
Hello, my name is Enrique Mercado.
and we would like to welcome you to our 2022 Flex Day presentation. Thank you for choosing to attend our presentation this morning. Enrique and I are the 2021-2022 MSW Interns at Fresno City College. And if you don't know, MSW stands for Master of Social Work. So our title for our presentation today is On Campus MSW Intern Services to Achieve Student Success. So this year's theme for Flex Day is creating connections, building bridges together. An important duty of social work, of being a social worker, is creating connections for the people and clients that you serve. So in this presentation, our objective for you is to understand social work and the MSW degree, get to know us as the interns, learn about the MSW intern services, and how and when to refer students to our services. We wanted to also highlight the importance of the impact of COVID-19 on students. This ongoing pandemic has pushed people's limits, especially students and faculty. It has affected financial security, housing, employment, food security, health and wellness, and academic success. So we think it's important to highlight the struggles that students are currently facing and how that impacts their learning environment. Our Flex Day presentation is advertised as one of FCC's best kept secrets, and we would like to change that and help bring awareness to the social work field and also the MSW Interns program at FCC. So I would like to begin to introduce social work. So some of you may be wondering what social work is and what it all entails. You'll often hear that social work is first and foremost a helping profession. And the American Psychological Association defines a helping profession as a career that provides health and education services to individuals and groups. The primary mission of the social work profession is to enhance human well-being and help meet the basic and complex needs of all people, with a particular focus on those who are vulnerable, oppressed, and living in poverty. And social workers share a commitment to help promote social welfare. They help people of all backgrounds to overcome challenges. They advocate for social and/or economic justice, and they embody a professional code of ethics, which I'll go into later on. And so there are 3 types of social work. So the first one is micro level, and then meso level, and then macro level. So beginning with micro level, so that's when social workers work directly with individuals and help them cope with their situations. At the meso level practice, that's working with groups instead of individual clients. And lastly is the macro level practice. So that's when social workers lead and establish social change on a large scale through organizing, through policy change, and administration. Also, the social work field is very broad and can cater to different interests and passions, but with all the same goal of wanting to help people. From my experience talking about social work with others, the response I hear a lot is that they think social workers only work at CPS or only with children. However, there are many positions and fields that social workers can enter. So I deeply believe that social workers are essential to many fields and can provide a different and unique perspective and treatment if necessary. So some settings where you are able to locate social workers will be administration and management, advocacy and community organization, aging, child welfare, developmental disabilities, healthcare, international social work, justice and corrections, mental health and clinical mental health, substance abuse, policy and planning, politics, public welfare, research, and school social work. And some positions, not all positions, but some positions in social work include case management, a counselor, medical social worker, researcher, professor, community social worker, working in forensics, military, and public health social worker. So, some social workers, as mentioned, embody a professional code of ethics. It's through the National Association of Social Workers, or the NSAW. The values consist of helping people in need and addressing social problems, challenging social injustices, respecting the inherent dignity and worth of a person, the importance of human relationships, integrity, and competence. So the code of ethics consists, so the first section would be the preamble, which summarizes the social work profession's mission and core values. The second session would be the purpose of the code of ethics. So it just provides an overview of the code's main functions and a brief guide for dealing with ethical issues or dilemmas in the social work practice. And then the third section would be ethical principles. So those present broad ethical principles based on social work's core values that inform social work practice. The final section would be ethical standards. So that just includes specific ethical standards to guide social workers' conduct. As Enrique and I assist students this year, and as we move on in our professional careers, we are to follow these codes of ethics. So if anyone is interested in reading the code of ethics for themselves, please feel free to contact me. I can send you the link where you're able to read it online or purchase a copy for yourself. And then I'll list our contact information will be at the end of this presentation. So now I want to show a brief video that highlights one social worker's story during this pandemic. Social workers have been essential, especially in this pandemic, with medical social workers, school social workers, social services, and community social workers, all working extra to ensure healthy and safe community members.
Their days are filled with long hours, high stress, and too often trauma. Lately, those demands have doubled. 13 on your side's Angela Cunningham introduces us to the unsung heroes of the COVID-19 pandemic.
We work very hard to help vulnerable children and families in our community.
From counseling to foster care, adoption, and mentoring, DA Blodgett St. John's provides a host of services, all aimed at making sure children are safe and happy.
It's a challenging job. It's a hard job.
And right there on the front lines are more than 100 social workers meeting needs both day and night.
Yeah, it's the same everywhere. You're in social work to help people.
Veteran social worker Jeremiah Hawkins says it's a job that has become increasingly demanding during this pandemic.
And let's not forget, our staff aren't immune to those things. You know, staff have family members who've been laid off. They've had family members who've gotten sick.
Despite those challenges, social workers are providing support in hospitals, nursing homes, and everywhere from mental health to child welfare settings.
It's really just trying to make people's lives a little bit better the best way that we can.
Sadly, too often they're called to help under the most difficult and darkest of circumstances.
When a child needs to be removed from a home, when you have somebody a young person that has faced abuse and neglect, you know, looking at a child, a 7-year-old who didn't ask for these kinds of things, but has spent a life of being abused, those are the hard days. That I can't do that.
I'm sorry.
It's heartbreaking.
Still, social workers routinely rise to the occasion, putting the job before all else.
They understand that the needs of our families have increased significantly, and a lot of times social workers will set aside their own health and well-being to take care of others.
You know, it's something a lot of people don't hear about, but it's so important to our community. It's so important for these families, and now more than ever. I just have so much respect for them.
Katie Buck believes social workers are the unsung heroes of today.
Just having a little bit of recognition for these people goes a long way.
But Hawkins,
When you see kids get better,
he believes the job
When you see a smile on their face, I mean, that's it.
Is its own reward.
When you can do that in a day, you can go home and be really proud of yourself. And I think that's what people really want, is to be able to say, I made a difference.
Angela Cunningham, 13 on your side.
So that was just one perspective of a social worker working during this pandemic and the struggles that they are facing and having to go through as well. So what is an MSW degree? So an MSW is a graduate level social work degree, and it stands for Master of Social Work or Masters in Social Work. The primary goal of an MSW program is to prepare students with the competencies needed to practice advanced social work. And there are on-campus and online programs, and it's best to attend programs that are accredited by the Council on Social Work Education or the CSWE. So upon graduating with an MSW, graduates may pursue social work licensure to become an LCSW in the state where they want to work. So that's where social workers are able to work in a clinical setting. Additionally, some may pursue a pupil personnel services credential or PPSC to be able to work in schools, in the school settings, as most California schools require this credential. And some may move forward with their education and earn a doctorate in social work. So I covered the basis of the social work profession and the MSW degree. Now we would like to move on to getting to know Enrique and me. We both believe in the importance of getting to know the interns that you may potentially refer students to and be working with this semester. And we hope that some of you are comfortable after this presentation to refer students to our services. So Enrique and I would like to take some time to go over our personal stories, specifically with our educational journey, in hopes you gain a better understanding of why we chose social work.
Good morning, everyone. So I'd like to discuss some of my difficulties in my academic road while attending Ridley College. But before this, I want to give you a little background about me. So growing up, it was just really me and my little brother. It was really, my mom really raised us. Raising us, we're on disability on government welfare assistance. And a large part of that was due to my mom being on disability. She had, as early as I can remember, she was diagnosed with Crohn's disease and MS. And my dad wasn't really around. So that really didn't really have us any parental figures to really guide us or, help us along the way. With that being said, we're stuck on Section 8, stuck in ugly parts of towns where gang affiliation was prevalent. So even at a younger age of 12, I started, being affiliated, hanging around, picking up habits. One of the worst habits I picked up was my drug addiction, and that was smoking crystal meth at the age of 14. Hanging around with this environment, and as I grew older, I seen that this is something I did not want for my life. I seen people who were middle-aged men who were still living with their parents, not doing anything except creating more, stress upon their families. And for me, that was just something that I didn't want to burden my family with. So with that being said, I encouraged myself to further my education and actually go to college. However, the only thing that really messed me up, or I guess my passion, was that, going to college, but I didn't really know how to start. I remember taking courses like Psychology 101 and Western Civilizations because they sounded smart, but I didn't really have no course road in order for me to take a major, and then for me to start those classes so we could be accredited for that major. Another thing that really messed me up was that my first semester, I remember getting straight Fs and maybe like 2 Ds. So for that first year, after that, I was placed on academic probation, as well as getting my financial aid taken away. Well, at this time, my first year, I was also dealing and battling with my own drug addiction, trying to get away from that, as well as trying to find transportation to get to and from school. And for a lot of people may not understand, like transportation for me at the time was crucial, because the days that I couldn't go to school meant that I had more time at home, which meant that I can, hang out with everyone else and, try to get away from the things I'm trying to avoid, opposed to having transportation, go to school and get away from that. And so for me, I usually kind of use school as a way or an excuse to not hang out with all these gang affiliate people I was trying to get away from. So at my third semester, following my failure of my first year, I was lucky enough to get drafted or get introduced to the program called Student Selective Services at Ridley College. And this program was to help, or meant to help, people who were first generation college students. When I first had my appointment, I remember meeting a counselor named Rosalva. And when I met her, she just had this undivided attention to help me and this willingness. And for me, I just felt like I was a burden. The reason being is because I used to always see her for questions about, like how to engage teachers in that academic, help with like tutors and stuff like that. However, sometimes my biggest fear was actually taking that step. I could never ask for help because I felt shamed, or because of my past failures in my first semester, I would feel like now I felt like I was dumb. And if I were to ask that help, then now other people know how dumb I am too. So during that third semester, I was trying to do better for myself so that way I can get back to a better academic standing. I had a death of my little brother. During that spring semester, I took an academic leave for a year. And during that year, I started working full time. During that year, I actually didn't have no intention to go back to school. I just wanted to go to work. And the reason being was because at the time I was dealing with something so tragic. And working at a job that required me to work from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. was something that got that off my mind, got my mind occupied off something else. However, what I didn't understand was depression and anxiety was things that were eating me inside. I remember that summer, the spring semester, right before the fall semester was gonna begin, I got a call from Rosalva telling me, "Hey, Enrique, what's going on? I get to come back to school?" And for an instant, I was gonna say no, but in my heart, I knew that's what I wanted to do, and that was the correct path to take. So in the fall, I decided to go back, but this time again, I had to redeem myself as a student. I had to do better academically, so that way I can get better at my academic standings and then get my financial aid back. However, during that semester, my biggest difficulty was my trauma. I remember trying to read my homework assignments and I couldn't comprehend what I was reading. I felt so dumb. I felt ashamed. It wasn't until I actually went to go see Rosalva and talk to her about these things that she referred me to the psych services. And it was there that after a year spending time with the psych services that I got to actually talk about my feelings, talk about my addiction, talk about my trauma, and get all that out. But honestly, I didn't happen just the first time she recommended me. It wasn't until actually the third time she recommended me and asked me, "Hey, Enrique, were you able to see these psych services?" And it wasn't in a way where she was pushing me to, seek them, but it was kind of a way to see that the services were available to me and I wasn't getting turned down. So that for me was really upbringing for me, because for someone to take interest like that in a person like me was very uplifting. The last thing I'd like to talk about is the moment right before I graduate from Ridley College. I remember it was in May, and I getting a letter in the mail. And as I opened it, it had something stating I had been chosen to receive the Tiger Award for Ridley College. And for me, I thought this was kind of comical, because me getting this award, this is a prestigious award. So as graduation came came forward, I got a call asking if I was actually going to go to the ceremony. And so that's when I knew it was real. It wasn't until after the ceremony I found out that it was my counselor from the Student Selected Services Program who selected me to receive that award. After that ceremony, I'd asked her, why did she pick me that award? I didn't have no academic GPA of a 4.0 or a 3.5. And let alone, I didn't feel sufficient enough to be entitled to that award compared to everybody else on my peers. I remember her putting her hand on my shoulder and telling me, being academically successful isn't always about being a 4.0 student. It's about overcoming your challenges despite everything else that's going on in your world. And I see that strength, I see that strife, and I feel like this award is going to serve you great purpose for your future. And it has. Upon transferring over to Fresno State, using that award as my in my resume and using other things as well, I was able to be a student assistant at my BA level on my criminology degree, and also later on take on the MSW program. So I just want to say thank you guys so much for listening to my story, and now I want to pass it on to Nadine. Thank you.
So my higher ed journey began almost 10 years ago. I first attended a private university in Riverside, California for my freshman year of college. And after that freshman year, I decided to come back home to Fresno. I took a semester off. And then I started schooling again at Clovis Community and Fresno City. So that time was around, so my time at Clovis Community and Fresno City College was around 2015 to 2018. During most of that time, I was taking classes to fulfill the prereqs for X-ray technician and X-ray technician programs. So I originally thought I was going to go into X-ray tech with hopes of going into radiation. Also during that time, I wasn't doing well in my courses. I wasn't understanding the topics and the subjects. I wasn't really interested in any of those. I was taking a lot of semesters off. I was working instead of attending classes and just not feeling very confident in my decisions regarding my career and my school courses. I was also struggling mentally and constantly felt anxious. And feeling that anxiousness is part of the reason why I chose social work, because of the ability to also help others that may be struggling mentally. And it's something that I can relate to. So sometime in 2017, while I was already on a waiting list for an X-ray tech program, I decided to switch my major to social work because I desired to help people. And all I knew of social work was that it was a helping profession at that time. So after I decided to make that major switch, it felt like everything just fell into place. I was able to easily switch and enroll into the classes that I needed. I started to do well, very well in my courses and take interest in the topics and the classes. And I was doing well despite taking on more courses and responsibilities just because I felt behind, just because I put in so much time for X-ray tech, and now I kind of had to start in the middle to take different courses. I decided to apply to Fresno Pacific University's degree completion program for social work and was accepted. And actually, as I was starting my program for FPU, I was also finishing up my associate's degree at FCC at the same time. So it was a very stressful time having to juggle both programs, but I am very proud of the fact that I was able to make Dean's List a couple of times at FCC and graduated summa cum laude in 2020 over at Fresno Pacific. In the fall semester of 2020, I also started my time for a 2-year MSW program over at San Jose State University. I'm very lucky because it's a fully online program. So now I am in my last semester at San Jose State University. I'm very excited about graduation in the spring. I am at FCC to intern because my program requires an internship every year. And my previous internships included interning at Fresno Interdenominational Refugee Ministries, or FIRM, and also over at Tulare City School District to intern and do school social work. So in the summer of 2020, I reached out to my former social sciences professor, who is my now supervisor here at Fresno City College, Natasha Bibioff. I reached out just to simply update her about graduating FPU, and also wanted to do like a life update. And we talked potentially about being able to intern here the following year. I actually used to be a student aide at Fresno City College, so having the opportunity to intern and be back on campus was very exciting for me. And now I'm happy to be here with one semester left to be able to help students on campus in any way that I can. I can also relate to students and relate to some of the issues that students are currently facing, as I am still a student myself, having to deal with the struggles, especially struggles from the pandemic. But I am looking forward to seeing what this semester will bring to my learning experience and how I can contribute to a better FCC community. After graduation, I don't know exactly which field I would like to enter, but I am glad that social work is a very broad field, and I'm able to enter in many fields, which is another reason why I chose social work. And I'm just grateful for the help that I have received from previous instructors and counselors on campus, and I would like to just return that to other FCC students. So thank you for listening to both Enrique and I's personal story. We hope that you're able to find or relate to some of the stories and understand why we kind of chose social work as our career. And now I would like to introduce our services to you. So the start of the MSW Interns program on campus began back in 2012 in order to help the needs of social science division students only. However, today the MSW interns are able to assist all FCC students. This past fall semester, both Enrique and I have been interning online, like most of you have been working remotely. We hope to soon transition to in-person this semester. When we do transition, we will be located in the Social Sciences Division, Office 118. And as I said, at the end of this presentation, we will list our contact information for you. Our services are to assist FCC students in resolving challenging situations that interfere with the ability to complete educational goals. So we want to be able to create positive connections for students that will use either on-campus or community resources. And then we do serve Fresno City College students. Before we assist students, I want to mention that Enrique and I have to go over an informed consent documentation form with the students so that they are aware of confidentiality and their client rights, and also understand what our services exactly mean. And Enrique and I do not intern every day, and we are limited on our time spent at our internship. So our schedules, so Enrique's schedule is Tuesday and Thursdays from 9 to 3, and Fridays from 10 to 2. And my schedule is Monday and Tuesdays from 8 to 2, and Wednesdays from 8 to 1. So again, feel free to reach out to us during those days. If we can't get back to you, if we're not in the office, we'll get back to you the next day. Feel free to reach out to us if you would like our schedule again. If any of you are interested in a flyer or information video that Enrique and I made to be sent out to your students or posted on your Canvas pages, we can provide those materials for you. Again, just feel free to reach out to us. We can definitely get those to you. And the differences between Psych Interns and MSW Interns. So some of you are very familiar with the services offered by the Psych Interns over at the Psychological Services Office. Some of you have made referrals already or even used the services yourself. While preparing for this presentation, we realized the importance of identifying the difference between psych and MSW interns. So psych interns, they provide services such as individual therapy, group therapy, talking circles, psychological testing and assessment, and on-campus outreach. While MSW interns provide short-term support, we're very crisis-centered focused, and we provide links to services. We often refer students to on-campus resources and also community resources as well. And we want to support students to increase student agency and help build collaborative relationships between community agencies and students. And we especially want to help out students during the stressful times of this pandemic. I want to emphasize that we do not offer individual counseling or academic advising. So our jobs in that situation, if students are seeking those services, are to refer them out to either psych services on campus or another service off campus, and then for academic advising to refer them to counseling services. However, we do collaborate with the psych services office as needed and often refer students to their office. So now I'd like to pass it over to Enrique, who's going to cover the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on students.
All right, hello everyone. So I just want to go over again. So as MSW interns, we also take part in the stress workshops for the semester. Two of the ones that we facilitated, for one of them was stress reduction and identifying and setting boundaries. And while we all know how important it is to set boundaries when it comes to work and family. Another workshop we facilitated was the cultural components of stress, as well as stress reduction. So it's just providing people with information on how to identify you and your culture, as well as being competent of other cultural components. Next slide, please.
Okay, hello everyone.
All right. So next I want to talk about the impact of COVID. The reason I want to talk about this is because this has been really, this whole event has been stressful, and not only on just the students, but teachers as well. Universities and colleges from all over the world unexpectedly changed the learning setting from over 14 million college students in response to the spread of COVID. In addition, teachers had to unexpectedly learn a new way of learning and engage students. Next slide, please. So next on this slide, I know we're all tired of talking about COVID symptoms and stuff. So I'm just gonna go over briefly just about, the science and stuff in regards to COVID and the symptoms. And the first thing I wanna go over is just basically the signs. They don't automatically appear right away. It takes about 2 to 14 days. Symptoms can be anything from fever, cough, tiredness, muscle aches, throat, headache. People with pre-existing conditions are a little more higher at risk. Those who are cancer, type 1 or type 2 diabetes, pregnancy, asthma. And of course, like we all heard before, helping prevent the spread of this disease, we could always stay 6 feet apart from each other, wearing masks, keeping our constantly washing our hands, and most importantly, trying not to stress. Next slide, please. So now I want to talk about this graph right here. And this is a US Census Bureau household pulse survey. And what it illustrates is the average share of adults reporting symptoms of anxiety disorder and or depressive disorder. And now if you look onto your left on the blue part where it has 11%, this data was collected from January through June of 2019. So this data was collected right before January, right before we hit the pandemic, all the way until after the lockdown. And people have reported only 11% of experiencing anxiety disorder or depressive disorder. Now, if you fast forward 2 years ahead and you look at just January 2021, just the launch January, that number almost quadrupled. And you're looking now at 41.1% of adults who now experience some type of anxiety disorder, depressive disorder. And even now with this new variant, we're now seeing how this may even increase. Next slide, please. So now I want to talk a little bit about anxiety disorder. And this can be defined as a frequently having intense, excessive, or persistent worry about fear about everyday situation. Some of the causes are not fully understood. However, there have been studies to say that life experiences such as traumatic experiences trigger anxiety disorder in people. There are also medical causes that are linked to this, such as heart disease, diabetes, thyroid problems, drugs misuse, or withdrawal. There's also several risk factors, such as trauma, stress due to illness, stress buildup, personality, drugs and alcohol, relatives with anxiety disorder. And then, of course, prevention. And the best way to do it is always to seek help. And anxiety disorder, again, can be could be something very shameful for a person. I can speak personally for myself. When I had anxiety, I didn't know how to seek help. And furthermore, it was embarrassing, especially in those pivotal times when you had to go presentate and you were fidgeting or your eye was twitching or, your body was reacting in a way that you didn't want it to, and you just felt shameful. So going back and seeking that help is always that number one, advice I would advise other people to get. Next slide, please. So next, I want to talk about depression. And this can be defined as depression is a mood disorder. It causes a persistent feeling of sadness and loss of interest. Some of the symptoms can go as untreated and undiagnosed into older adults. And this can make a person feel reluctant to seek help. The causes are unknown exactly what causes depression, but a variety of factors can contribute to this, such as biological differences, brain chemistry, hormones, and inherited traits. So some of the quotes I chose, for example, was by Dorothy O'Rell, and it states, "Depression is a prison where you are both the suffering prisoner and the cruel jailer." And the reason why I chose this quote right here is because I could personally relate to this, because I remember personally being so depressed with my brother's death and trying to reenter school. That first initial step to seek help and get those mental health services was challenging for me, because coming back to my background as being a gang affiliate member, me seeking help or me to accept this help and say that I actually want to get this mental help meant that there was a problem with me. And in all honesty, that's okay. But at the time, I didn't think that was okay. That was a flaw that I didn't want to accept. So therefore, it's always up to us, and we are the cruel jailer, to accept whether or not when it's time for us to get that help. Another thing that I wanted to highlight or bring about was a quote by J.K. Rowling. And she's expressing how numbing the pain for a while will only make it worse for when you find and feel it. Next slide, please. Next, I want to talk about self-compassion. And this can be defined as a healthy way to relate to oneself in times of suffering, despite failures and feeling of inadequacy. This allows people to accept themselves as who they are, and it permits individuals to understand the problem they have as common. And I think for this right here, I think a lot of teachers need to have self-compassion for themselves, especially for the physical demand they have right now and the burden with this transition to online learning. I know personally, speaking to my own professors at Fresno State, they tell me how overwhelming it is when they have technical errors and students are so demanding with their emails about how to fix things, and it's because stressful, especially for teachers, because not only do they have to balance their work, but they also have to come home to their families. And then they also have other jobs to do as well. So having that self-compassion and knowing it's okay, you're not alone in this, makes it a little less hectic for you. And not only that, but having all these demands as well, on a teacher can be very depressing and it'll create anxiety. Next slide, please. So next, I want to talk about empathy. So after having self-compassion for yourself and accepting for yourself of who you are, now you can practice empathy and you can understand a person from his own framework and reference rather than one's own. Now, to practice empathy, this requires attention to others and the words and body language with noticing their feelings. Some examples of empathy is when counselors and teachers who showed me empathy during my troubled times. And sometimes this can be difficult because we face challenges within our own life that create biases. However, having an open mind and being that open ear and reinforcing that their services are, I believe, are the most excruciating and important part of a student's academic career as they're going and progressing through their through college. I know for me, like I said before, like my counselor, even some of my teachers have the most important impact on me. And so I would encourage a lot of faculty if they could, to practice this. Next slide, please. Next, I want to talk a little bit about online learning. And I want to talk about some of the effects. Like, for example, the tiredness or not being able to sleep. And sometimes we ask ourselves, how is it that we feel so tired if we're not even trying to work anymore? We take on more tasks than we usually do. And we think it's okay because we're just on a computer. However, there are health effects of that. And one of them is Zoom fatigue. And this is when a person's experience spending too much time in front of the computer screen. And this can lead to tiredness, brain fatigue from over-exaggeration, can lead to bad skin and sleep deprivation. So getting a little bit more about how you get Zoom fatigue is, well, the brain it gets fatigued from overexertion from images. So it means you constantly looking at images on your screen without having a break or taking a block off time. Now our brains process images, and when we oversaturate our eyes and brains with images on the screen, and doing multiple tasks, the images can create brain fatigue, and then itself leads to physical fatigue. So taking or setting boundaries for yourself is really important, especially for teachers, because a lot of times what we're doing is we're logging on, and then as soon as we're done with our job, we're logging on to a different job, or we're going home and not having enough time for transition. And it's crucially important for us to take time for ourselves. You're a human being. And just like every human being, we need some time for ourselves just to, take that time to reboot. Next slide, please. Next, I want to talk about the stress of online learning. And there are two specific types of stresses that I want to talk about. The first one is chronic stress, and this results in role overload, conflicting roles in an individual's life to produce competing and potentially conflicting demands over time. Examples of this are school, work, parenting. And as mentioned before, with online learning, it's a lot more easier for us just to transition into our next role, whether it's a second job or a third job, or whether it's coming home from work and trying to transition to the family. It's stressful because you don't allow yourself time to de-escalate from that previous role. And now you're coming to this other role. And sometimes you may be angry because of what happened in the role you were previously playing, or you may be depressed or however it is. And sometimes you might come out wrong on your family. Another thing I'll like to talk about is life experiences. And this can be explained as a series of experiences that create a stressful impact. And this has to do more with the events in your life. So students, teachers, and take a second, just think about like the moments you had in this semester, about like just problems you have with online learning. Did it create any stress for you? Did you have any anxiety? If you said yes, then it's perfectly normal to experience these things. I know for me, myself as a student, experiencing technical errors, not being able to, complete my homework assignments due to like problems such as that can be very stressful. And even over time, having several of these experiences can be traumatic. Next slide, please. So next, I want to talk about some of the workshops that we have done. If you click right here under professional development at Fresno City College, there is a link. You just need to click on it and it'll automatically take you to the workshops. There's also other workshops facilitated by Fresno City faculty. They're very helpful in regards to stress reduction. Next slide, please. So next, I want to talk about scenarios and issues for when faculty should refer a student. So one thing I like to talk about is transportation. Students who are experiencing trouble with transportation to school. So these are things that we can try to look into and see what we can do. Maybe give them a bus card to get to school, or see other avenues to try to help them with this problem. I know for me, transportation was the biggest issue. And for me, it wasn't just going to school and missing class. For me, I felt like it was my life on the line, because the days I didn't miss school was the days I had more time to spend on the streets. So students who, I guess, come from the type of background, I can understand that it's more than just, missing a day of school. Also financial issues. Students have questions in regards to financial aid or employment. These are things that we can also help address, or if we don't know, we can also get information to help them know, or even seek other reference them out to other people to help them out with their questions. Another thing is academics, the importance of tutoring on campus for students. So we implore you to, keep encouraging students, about the tutoring on campus, especially now that we're in person. This is important, especially when, you fall behind, or you just, don't know the subject. I know for me personally, seeking tutoring was a big help for me, and was one of the main reasons why I was able to become so successful later on in my college years at Greeley College. Also housing. Right now we're facing the pandemic, and currently if you are aware, the unemployment rate is very high. So I can imagine how many students are unemployed and are still seeking jobs, but at the same time facing financial issues. So even having the proper attire for a job interview can be challenging, because if you don't have money to pay rent, or you don't have money for transportation, how are you gonna have money to have a proper attire for an interview to then be successful? It's kind of like a cycle. And then the next thing I want to talk about is mental health. This is something that we refer students to when we see that it's an area out of our expertise. And I know for a lot of people, they may seem like it's a touchy subject, especially when it comes to mental health. It seems like, oh, I don't want to do it, or it has that stigma where it's like, if you take mental health, then you're this type of person. But I could tell you personally from my own story, seeking mental health, it's challenging. And the most challenging part is accepting that you need help. But after spending that time and getting the help that I need, I can tell you that I would not be here today if it wasn't for me seeking those services. Next slide, please.
All right, thank you, Enrique. So on this slide is our contact information. As I mentioned, that we would list that. So our coordinators, which are Natasha Bibioff and Renee Cliff, they are Enrique and I's supervisors here at Fresno City College. So feel free to contact them if you have any questions about the program. If you have any questions about this presentation or social work, or want to refer students directly to Enrique or I, here's our email addresses. We can post this in the chat for you in a couple of seconds. So again, just feel free to reach out to us with any questions or comments or concerns. I hope you all enjoyed our presentation and feel comfortable now learning about the MSW intern services and how we can help students on campus. and that you are comfortable referring students to us. And now we would like to take some time. If any of you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to list them in the chat and we will answer them as they come through the chat.
Carolyn and Enrique, there are a couple questions in there. I'm not certain if you're going to have the answers to them or not, but about the bus pass, the free fax bus passes for students, has that been renewed or discontinued, or do you know?
Honestly,
yeah.
oh, go ahead, Marie, I'm sorry.
As I checked last semester, because we did have concerns with students wondering about that last semester, the information from last semester was that the funding was not provided. And so it has not been renewed as of last semester, but we can definitely double check again for this semester.
And there was another question about the clothes closet that Karen Henderson awesomely answered that. Lori Swain wants to know if you can put your contact info, I'm sorry, I disabled your screen sharing. Could you re-share your screen with the contact info? Sure. And just so you know, both Nadalyn and Enrique have Fresno City College.edu email addresses. So if you can't remember, you can do a global search within the address book in Outlook for either of them.
And I believe I saw in the chat, Renee posted our email addresses in the chat.
And Sal wants to let everybody know, says thank you for your presentation. If students have a diagnosed disability such as anxiety or depression, they can seek accommodations for their classes through DSPS for additional support. Thank you for that, Sal.
Thank you.
And it looks like Liza has a question. Go ahead, Liza.
Good morning. Yes, I do have a question. So what is your timeline of response when we contact you to, for example, refer a student that, well, you know, as you say, sometimes it's hard for them to share their personal, whatever is going on. How fast is your response? So if I contact you on Monday referring this student, when this student will get in touch with you and the assistance that the student might need, how long this process goes and paperwork, etc.
So typically they will get a response, typically the same day or next day. We've been really good about our responses to students and instructors when they do send in referrals or they do reach out. So typically within 24 to 48 hours.
Okay.
And Renee is private chatting me. Sorry about that, Renee. Could you please put your spring work hours into the chat?
I will put that.
And yeah, and Renee also says that the interns will respond to you on their next duty day. Has everybody got the information they need from this slide? I'd like to make this a little bit more interactive so we can all see each other. Okay, Aaron, go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Nadalyn and Enrique. That's really great to meet you both. And I work in social sciences division and have had the opportunity to refer some students in the last couple of years to our MSW interns. And it's mostly for depression or housing problems. And it's tough to not know the end of that unless they share that with me. I don't get to hear how it's going for them, if they had some resolution to these situations. So I'm just curious, in your field, do you get to follow up with people and hear how they're doing afterwards? Or is it sort of like, I hope everything's okay, and you don't hear the end of it? How much follow-up do you have with people that you're working with?
Aaron, this is Renee. I'd like to answer that if I can.
Sure.
Because of client privacy, the interns or social workers in general, we don't follow up with our clients. If our clients get in contact with us, obviously we will have the opportunity to give them to hear what's going on with them and give them follow-up services, but we don't reach out to people. And once again, that's based on our respect for their privacy. And sadly, more than that, the interns would not communicate with an instructor to tell the instructor any of the outcomes of the services. And that's just because of our respect for client privacy is top of our priority list. And so we fulfill that in terms of our own interactions with clients, as well as telling other information to other people.
Good, thank you. That makes sense. And I certainly didn't expect to hear back from the MSW interns at all due to that concern, unless the students themselves would get back to me. It's just watching that video with the gentleman from, what was it, St. John's area. You're dealing with so much trauma, so much burden, even on the social workers. It feels like it would be nice to see some resolution, just to see some joy in the job. And I was just kind of curious in the profession in general, how much resolution you see, but yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
That is a challenge. And, one of the things we have to do for our own self-care is develop ways to get that kind of compensation, if you will, just knowing that, well, essentially where our perspective is, if we don't hear back from the client, then that means things are going wonderfully. So it's kind of how you leave it.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Thanks for asking, Aaron.
Any other questions for our interns or for Renee? Janine Gonzalez Serta says, great presentation. Thank you to both of you, Enrique and Nadalyn. She'll be reaching out to you soon to invite you to come share this information with the larger counseling team who could not attend the session. So this is really great information for all counselors to know. And then Mark is asking about the bus passes separately. Is an mail all going out about the hours? We can request our deans to do so. Renee, do you know this on the all-campus email? Mark, I'm not sure what you're asking. Are you asking, is a mail out going out about the bus passes?
No, I'm actually asking about the intern hours.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, yes. As Nadalyn mentioned in her presentation, they have a short video that can be sent out to anybody. And we were planning to just distribute that within the social sciences division, but it could go out to the entire campus community. So that's something. And once again, it's a very brief explanation of their service hours, as well as what they presented here this morning, what they do, what a social work intern does. Additionally, Enrique or Nadalyn would be very happy to come to your face-to-face classes and do a little 5-minute presentation, if that's something you're interested in. So just send them an email if you would like to request that.
Okay, yeah, I've done that in the past. And as Aaron alluded to, in prior years, the availability of the interns seemed to be limited to just social sciences due to grant limitations. And with this workshop, it seems that's expanded. And if that's the case, well, as a faculty member, I can personally put that same pressure to get an all-campus email out. These seem to be very good services that ought to be publicized. That's only the intent of my question. And if that email from psych services or from the interim president, that seems to be helpful.
Yes, Mark, we're in a bit of a sticky situation in that with only 2 interns, we don't feel quite capacitated to be able to respond to the entire campus community. We would love to do that, and we will never shut the door on any request. But as you said, our grant, so to speak, is specifically for the social sciences division. But we will not shut the door on a student request from any division. So thank you for asking that. But we are examining the possibility of expanding to services for the entire campus.
Renee, is it possible for you to send me the video and I can send it to the people who attended this session at least?
You're speaking, Susie, of the video that that Nadine and Enrique prepared, the short video?
Yes.
Sure, absolutely, we can do that.
Okay. So that's it. Renee will send that to me and I'll make sure you all get a link to that video.
Thank you.
Luisa says this was a wonderful presentation and very valuable information for faculty and especially our students. Thank you to the interns. Claudia echoes that. Thank you. Elizabeth wants a copy of the video. Rebecca says flyers are needed so instructors can post on Canvas announcement. And again, I'm not certain if we're running into the same issues, Renee, with doing a campus-wide sharing of that or not with the flyer.
That's possible, but we're not going to say no because we want to be available to students. So we'll trip over that bridge when we come to it in terms of being overwhelmed.
Okay. And there's some more thank yous. I'll get the video. Probably I'll get that video out to you. Mark says, thank you for the information. And Luisa says, yeah, this is information that our part-time faculty should have as well. They're also, serving our students and far more than quite a few of our students. Excellent presentation. Anybody else? Go ahead, just unmute yourself and ask. You need to raise your hand. If you want to ask them, if there are no more questions, we'll end this a little bit early. You'll still get full credit for the entire session, of course. Darlene, I see that you've unmuted yourself. Did you have a question? Lisa, how about you?
I know that our school has been focusing on young males, in particular of color, to increase retention. But I think this presentation that we have from this young man, Ernesto, is just phenomenal. And I think if he's willing, I'd love to be able to refer some of my male students to speak to him so that he could share his story. Because he is a great role model of how being tenacious and having nothing to little support, he was able to be who he is today and affecting so many positive lives. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah,
Julia,
I would welcome that. Thank you.
You're welcome, Enrique.
I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're fine, Susie.
Julia wants to thank you for mentioning tutorial services. The Writing and Reading Center wants to help every student with writing projects. And then Ben wants to know, Nayland, could you put the slide up again, the difference between interns and psych services interns for Ben?
Just to clarify on that question, psych services is going to address more psychological mental health problems, especially those in terms of long-term support and assistance, whereas the MSW interns address issues, needs, life situations that are threatening a student's capacity to complete their academic goals. So they do provide short-term supportive emotional assistance, but not really the long-term therapeutic mental health intervention that the psych interns would provide, if that helps.
Perfect. And also the interns will be sending me their slide deck and I'll also be sharing that with all of you. So
and also know that both the psych interns and the MSW interns refer clients back and forth. So if the MSW interns get a referral for a student and it appears that the student really would do well with psych services, they will then refer the student to psych services, and the reverse is true as well. So the psych interns will refer students to the MSW interns. So I guess don't fret about whether, am I referring, the student to the correct intern. You can also always call the MSW interns or the psych interns and ask for information about what the appropriate referral would be. The other thing, I'm sorry I'm going on here, but one of our most important commitments in social work is something we call client empowerment. And that begins with clients deciding and requesting help on their own. So it's really a more perfect beginning to the social worker client relationship if the client or the student self-refers, as opposed to an instructor referring. So if you are concerned about a student needing support from one of the interns, I would suggest that you talk with the student about the services the interns provide, and then encourage the student to reach out to the interns, him or herself. That's really, as I said, a better initializing of the helping relationship than the instructor referring the student. But we will absolutely take referrals from instructors.
This is Elizabeth. I was going to ask and say, how often do you find that actually happening, that the student will self-refer? Because in my classes, the students are really not, if I walk through them with it, and if I kind of go with them, then they might do that. But to say, go do this on your own, most of my students wouldn't do that.
We understand that as a situation where the student may not be ready to receive help.
Okay.
So we don't necessarily see that as a failure. And if you really think that a student needs your support to make contact with an intern, then by all means, send Enrique or Nadine a referral, or as you said, even walk the student to their office door. But another commitment we have in social work is that we never do anything for a client that the client can do for him or herself. That really creates dependence.
Okay. Okay.
We're always trying to support or nurture people's independent functioning, and encouraging client self-referral is one of the initial ways we do that.
I appreciate your explaining that. Thank you.
But once again, never, if you really think that a student needs your support to make contact with one of the interns, absolutely, please follow through and do that.
Thank you, Renee. Ben also wants to say Enrique was in TRIO Student Support Services over at Reedley, and he shared that Resolve is really proud of you. Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, great big huge thank you to our Master of Social Work interns. Big round of applause, virtually or yay. And also a great big thank you to our interpreters, Mercedes and Janae. I'm going to go ahead and end this session. I hope you guys all have a wonderful Flex Day, and I'm sure I'll be seeing you around in the rooms. Thank you.